So again, good morning. The topic for today is about conceptual design. Now, some of you may already have even submitted conceptual design to the design class. In which case, I apologize if this lecture came late. Although I think in principle I'm still placing my timetable. I think we're not supposed to submit conceptual design yet. Anyways, um, there are design determinants in making the conceptual design or conceptual diagram, and there are four of them. First is the program and preferences, and then the on-site form determinants, then the off-site form determinants, and design theory. So we will go through each one of them. So the program preferences is basically what we have already been discussing in the past um, when we talk about the requirements of the owner. But then what I want to emphasize now is that there are at least three sources for the architectural brief or the program. It's not only the owner, but also other people aside from the owner, like the community or other users. And then there is the site itself, whatever is the um, whatever is the features and attributes of the site. Okay. Um, Now to illustrate all the things that I'm going to teach you in this lecture, I decided to use only one sample project, and that project is precisely this one, no? A portion of a 25-hectare property in the mountainous area of Bukidnon will be developed into a place for camping or overnight staycation for people who want to enjoy life in the mountains. So the facility should make full use of the natural features of the site for the added attraction to the site. Okay, so this uh, one paragraph already contains many things, or it already contains everything that the owner wanted to um, to to see in the fulfillment of the project. So we come out to a base map. So this is the map of the project. Although this is not really an ideal base map because it still lacks a lot of information. Like for example, the road. There should be data here on the width of the road and the type of the road, and then there should be a bar scale, and then the contours of the topography should have the numbers indicating elevation so that we would know where the highest elevation is and where the lowest. But the highest will be the one here on the top, and then the lowest would be these two, like um, two parts here at the bottom with the concentrated contours. Okay. And then I also failed to put the vegetations, the trees where they are supposed to be. So I lack time. Because this is an actual project and it was originally drawn in, uh, since it's a diagram, it was made in Illustrator, and I have to remove a lot of the information, and then to focus on this site, and then to make the succeeding diagrams. Anyway, so this is like the base map. This is the map that we'll be using all throughout, okay, for different analysis. On-site form determinants include the following: sun and wind exposure, lot size and shape, location in relation to transportation system, significant vegetation, topography and other natural features, prominent vistas and views of natural or cultural landmarks, and building scale and character. So actually, again, we have already discussed this. Okay, so we already mentioned this. In fact, sun and wind exposure is like the staple in site analysis. Nearly, it's like this is the only thing that the students know when they come to sun analysis. They just put sun and wind exposure, and that's it. Um, well, they have the lot size and shape, and sometimes you put the noise and also the views. Okay, but aside from that, that's it. And it's not even a site analysis; it's a site inventory, as we shall see later on. Okay, so this is just like a review because these are things within the site, attributes of the site that can affect the form of buildings or of the development. Now, if there is an on-site form determinant, there is also an outside form determinant. No, but going back to on-site, I forgot that I have this. So with the base map before, making the use of the base map, we make what we call the site inventory. Okay, so here I indicated that this is the highway. Okay, and then I place the buildable areas, represented them with circles like zones. And then there are points of interest. Up here is the highest point. And then there's a cave. Then there's a basin. And then there's actually a cave-like feature here below. And then there are good views from the top, of course, from the highest point. But then from this buildable area here at the right, there's a view going to the buildable area somewhere below it. And then from the buildable area here, there's a good view to the cave-like feature, the basin, and the other parts. No? Because this one's here is actually like going down, like the whole thing is like a basin. So there's a good view here. So there's not much view from this level except going in. But on the topmost portion, the view is going out. Okay. And then in my base map, I forgot to put the trees, but then so here they are, no? Dense foliage, so there's like a forest all around, and these ones in the middle is like there are few trees. Okay. Now off-site, so this is that highway, and then this asterisk is the property. And then if we make an area with a radius of 2 kilometers, you can see from the map that within the 2 kilometer radius, you have Apple Spring Resort, and a lot of similar facilities, like there's a log house, log cabin, and then the adventure parks and cottages here, and then there's also the Gambodis Falls somewhere there. So there are similar facilities. So the architect, you as a planner, has to like benchmark, no, in terms of design, what could be more attractive than all these facilities because these are considered competitions. And then there are also destinations like a spring resort or a falls or an adventure resort below. So therefore your facility, the project will sort of become a base for people to stay overnight and then go to these other places because um, the assumption is that they prefer to stay at your place, the project site, and then just go to these other places to enjoy during the day. So therefore, that's another consideration on the form, the amenities to provide. And then we have the design theory, which is basically what we did in our design class, in my design class. So I asked them to make a concept board for the subdivision and show pictures. So here, for example, the owner wanted to have a swimming pool which is more natural rather than the very refined type, then a view deck on top, and then he wants to families to stay in a house like a cottage, but then he also wants some facility for camping for small groups or individuals, so something like this. So these are just for inspiration. And then, of course, you can have an overall theme, overall theory behind all of these pictures. And so we make a site analysis. Here, for example, I placed that there's the main entry is here because the topography is favorable to it. And this is the only part which is connected to the highway. And then this first buildable area here is the best part for locating a parking, an admin office or building, and a coffee shop. And then um, this part here, the buildable area here is a good location for a homestay, as well as this other area here. But on the other side, this is like a small hill, so this is a good place for a campsite. And since it overlooks another buildable area, so this other buildable area is a good place for pools and recreation. Okay. Now for the points of interest, the highest point is best for a view deck. The cave to have to be developed for cave exploration, and then the basin is developed into a catch basin, it's a water impounding area, and then the cave-like feature here will be made into a grotto. Okay, and then finally the connection, because of the topography, it seems that this is the ideal route, the ideal main road. Okay, and then there's also the opportunity to make a hiking trail all around, especially through the dense foliage, the dense forest area. Okay, so basically this is like our site analysis. So therefore, you have to be very familiar with the difference between a base map, a site inventory, and a site analysis. Okay. If you notice, to make it easier to look at the drawing, I assigned the site inventory to be colored black, and then the analysis colored red, so it's easier to read. And I try to make the symbols as simple as possible. Okay, then it's easier for me also to explain it like I would be explaining to a client. So the concept plan explains the internal functional relationships among the site and project components. The plan may be supplemented with a concept statement, like what we did, that is a brief written articulation of the design intent of the proposed concept plan. Character sketches or image boards with photographs may also convey the design concept before proceeding with detailed site design. Okay, so which is actually what we did also. So we have here what I meant by the sources of the program. So this is the client, then other than the client, other people like the community, and then the site itself. And then you apply all the knowledge, skills, and value you learn from this class or from the university, and then you come up with a concept plan. And then you can come up with like in our design course, we're asked 3 schemes. Okay. So there's always the process, the steps. There are only 4. Um, First is to delineate primary and secondary conservation areas. So in your site, what are the parts which should not be touched, which should not be developed, just in case there are. And then second, for the remaining site areas, so delineate the location which are suitable for development and what sort of development. So it's like you zone them first in a general way. And then step 3 is within the area suitable for development, delineate the development pods. So it's a smaller bubbles, inside big bubbles. So considering the accessibility. Then step 4 is to locate the primary and secondary circulation systems, considering the sizes and shape of the remaining developable areas. So I will be showing some illustrations later on how this process is actually applied. Now, the conceptual plan has to be interpreted in terms of graphics. Okay, we have to communicate through drawing. So the concept plan is a relatively simple diagram that shows how a project's major program elements relate to each other functionally and potentially visually. So concept plans often provide contextual information about the sites via physical and cultural features or design determinants that will be integrated into the development or redevelopment project. It's very important that your uh, diagram or visual diagram is a is easily understood. I borrowed here a book. I don't know if you can read it. Diagramming the Big Idea: Method for Architectural Composition. In, you might be able to find this in the library if you still go to the library. So there's a lot of ways how to make diagrams for complex projects. So what are conveyed in that drawing? So basically things that we already discussed: open space, vehicular circulation, pedestrian circulation, other circulation like bikeways, public transit, building, utilities, and views. And so far, we have not been discussing utilities. So if you try to review the steps, what we're actually doing in steps 1 to 3 is we zone them. But steps 1 and 2 is like general zoning. And then step 3 is like the refinement. And finally, um, step 4 is like the circulation. So here, on a concept plan, major uses of the site are typically portrayed diagrammatically as zones or bubbles. Okay, so like a bubble diagram, except that we are bubble diagramming a site, not a house. As the concept plan is defined, this activity or land use zones may be further subdivided to show building location and minor circulation patterns. So as the planning process moves further into the design development phase, these zones or development pods are then subdivided into smaller areas, and eventually each area is designed in detail. So this is already the later part. But just to show the in general that you start from something a big zone and then slowly refine it until everything is covered. So in addition to showing the location of proposed development zones, concept plans show the open spaces that will not be developed. So because the open spaces or those which are conserved is still part of your property which you're planning, so they should still appear in the drawing, okay, and then labeled as such. So here in our base plan again, I decided to zone, for example, this part here as public because it is near the road and this is where people would arrive. And then since there are people who will be staying for the day or overnight or so many nights, and then they will wants to enjoy just the serenity of the mountain area. So this part here, the rest of the part is for private zone. So very simple zoning. And then there's like a intersection of the two zones. This is the transition zone. I well, I was not able to label it. And then you have nodes and landmarks, which you already saw in the site analysis. So the concept plan also may identify nodes and landmarks. So these may be locations of either proposed buildings or other site features or significant existing buildings that will remain on or off the site. So nodes may be highlighted graphically and typically include the following. So entrances of the site or the building. This is very important because sometimes, most of the time, the students fail to indicate. Okay, so for entrance to the site, because you may, one side of the site may be facing the street and it's a very long side, but so where precisely in that side is the main entrance? Is somewhere to the left, to the right, or somewhere in the middle? So it has to be specified. And then one thing that is really always neglected is to indicate the entrance of the building. Okay? Because you can just put squares there and then no entrance. Actually, I did not do that in my example. No? But then it helps later on when you refine the drawing to know where the entrances are because the access will have to coordinate with that. No? And so you have intersection of pedestrian and vehicle circulation systems and scenic high points or scenic overlooks. Okay. Then landmarks include the following: specimen tree. There should be a very interesting tree that needs highlighting. Maybe it's the oldest, the biggest, or the most beautiful. Uh, Bridges, unique buildings, hilltops, or other topographic features. So now with my zoning, so I now put in more details. So in my public zone, I decided that this is only for parking and coffee shop because the admin, I moved it to the transition zone so that the admin can monitor both the public and the private zones. Okay, and then earlier in the analysis, we referred that this area here and this one are good for homestay. So therefore, I assigned them as homestay. And this will be for cave exploration activities. And this one finally assigned it as grotto. And then we also mentioned that this is a good place for campsite. And then since it overlooks another area which is more flat, so or is buildable, so this could be the pool and the playground. And on top you have the view deck. So more refinement, and then these are the nodes. No? So it looks very simple, but I think you can easily understand it. Although I missed out defining the basin, I focused more on the what we're going to build. And finally, the paths and edges. So you have a proposed activities on a site which relate to each other both functionally and visually. So the desired views between location and the site or between locations on and off the site, for example, can be depicted graphically with arrows and annotated labels. So the best graphic element to show these paths and edges are arrows. Um, okay, especially if the direction is important, like the views. So where is the good view, where is the bad view? If the arrow is pointing that way, so okay, this is the good view. So conversely, screening of undesirable views may be warranted, and this also can be portrayed graphically. How do you portray screening? So most of the time, it's like a cloud, like a clump of trees, or some, say, wavy lines, or just heavy lines, okay, to indicate a screen. So as much as possible, make it simple so that the rest of the work, the diagram is understandable. So linear elements in a concept plan may represent the following: actual relationship. No? Um, because you have so many components scattered, so you need a unifying factor. Um, if you've read the book of Frank Ching on form, space, and order, in principle, you discuss that book in your design one or design two, but more on design one, I think. Okay, Frank Ching, the author, offered many ways to organize spaces and elements within the space, you know, spatially. So circulation system, stormwater drainage pattern, utility views, edges, other edges, no, because circulation, all of these are like edges. When we go to planning two, we'll be talking about Kevin Lynch and elements uh, of urban design, no? Which includes paths and edges and districts and nodes. But that's for next sem. So finally, so I indicated the location of the entrance here. And then since I mentioned earlier that this is a good place for the main road, so I connected all my nodes to that main road. So from the start, that's where you can go to the homestay or go up to the view deck. Up ahead, you can go to the pool and ground. So these are activities. You can also go to the other side for the cave and the grotto. And then much further, it's more accommodation, the campsite, and a more private homestay. Okay. Um, And then I also indicated, okay, so I'm going to adopt that hiking trail that was mentioned earlier in the site analysis. So basically, this is a very simple conceptual diagram, okay? And then from this, I can make a scheme already for the site development plan, which is what happens here, okay? So the same base map. Um, so finally, I define the road, I define the parking areas. There's another parking here for the homestay, since the car cannot go in. So the car only goes up to here, although it is not mentioned, no, in the diagram, so that's lacking. And then this is parking, this is the coffee shop, and then there's an alfresco dining. There's another addition in the program, which is greenhouse. But this is the transition space, so the admin is here. And then there is the mountain is developed with landscaping. It has, this is very steep, so the pathway has to meander like this. And then this is the view deck, okay? Um, After considering, so it's not possible to go all the way like that. So the hiking trail just follows the connections like this. And then here it's not possible because beyond this is actually a steep drop. So the hiking trail goes here. And this is now the campsite. In between is a like a multi-purpose hall, and then it overlooks the pool, and then there's an activity area there. Number 8 is tiny houses along the slope. This is an additional requirement also later on, which because this is actually an actual project. No? Then the client wanted, after seeing this, the client said that let's make an alternative for people to go back or to proceed to an alternate route. Okay, so they go here. Then this is going down to the cave, and then there's a route here that avoids the grotto if there are activities here in the grotto. Okay, and then goes back. There's actually a bridge here, which I failed to mention um, in the original base map, and then that. So this is the schematic uh, design scheme, schematic design development plan. So I could prepare 3 schemes. This is only one scheme. Um, so this is the site diagram, conceptual diagram, and then this is your site analysis. Okay, so please be familiar with the difference of each of the drawings that I showed you. And if you notice, I did not put your favorite sun path diagram and also your wind direction. Why? Because they do not mean anything. This is the site inventory. It's not there also. What do I mean? This is the north, the sun, um, the sun sets here and then rises here and then sets in the west, okay? But then, since this is mountainous, full of trees, the sun is not a problem, it's not a big consideration, okay? And also the wind. The wind is not a big consideration even for design. Okay, there is a microclimate here, there's a lot of trees, so everything's just cool. It's not really the trees sort of stops the wind, okay? So therefore, if it is not necessary, do not put it there, okay? A lot of you think that really, no. Every time I see that, even in thesis, students presenting, this is the site analysis, and all you can see is the sun path and then the wind direction, then views, and then it's not even an analysis, it's an inventory. Now, you might notice that I'm the only teacher probably looking for site inventory. I don't know whether there are others, no? Um, your design teacher might be thinking, requiring you only site analysis, and then that's it. It's because they're not teaching planning, and then their specialization might be something else. Okay, but since I that's since I teach planning and then it's my specialization, so I'm more of well, understandably, I have to make sure that the process is followed, the proper process is followed, the the proper names are used, the proper terms are used. Okay, so this is the last slide. Okay, um, so next meeting, hopefully I will be meeting you on Tuesday, unless another something again comes up. But we will have a quiz also on Tuesday based on this lecture. Okay. Um, I guess that's it for now. No? There's only 15 of you out of so many. Um, is there any question? No.
And so far, sir.
Okay, so thank you for that. So I guess that's it. No? I'll just turn off the recording and then see you next week. If you have any questions,